a long time, and finally it's going to happen. So Dave Gerhardt and I are going to do a live. The date is February 11th at 1 p.m. So stay tuned for registration link and details. Honestly, we don't have the details figured out yet, but I think it's going to be great. Dave's super smart and looking forward to sharing some ideas. We're going to be most likely talking about progressive marketing. Right before we got on here, him and I were going back and forth on basically, have you seen anyone that's doing like real influencer marketing in B2B? And my answer back to him was no. And the reason that it was no is because B2B companies are too transactional to think about doing something like that. And so really looking forward, if there's someone that's listening afterwards that is doing it, would love to know about that, would potentially love to have you on the podcast to talk about that, because that is something that is a huge opportunity, but I think B2B companies don't think about it the right way and would rather run their ebooks through marketing automation. Cool. So getting into the agenda, there's one of this is like true, just like what has been happening a lot. I get a lot of questions, both from the customers that we work with, as well as people on this Zoom, as well as people that might want to work with us, about this whole category of content experience platforms, which I barely know any vendors in this, and I'm not going to shout or call any of them out. But basically, you create a hub inside of your website or on a third-party site where you can put all of your content, and then you can decide whether the entire hub is gated or ungated. And you can get, if it is gated or somehow the person is cookied, you'll be able to get analytics on what content they're looking at. And a lot of people are evaluating this. And I don't know what the costs of them are. I imagine they're like, 30 to 100K plus type of software packages. And they are built on one core assumption that I believe to be wrong. And that assumption is that people want to go to your website to consume content. And I don't think that it's true. I think that people want to consume content in the places that they already are. I can't remember the last time I went to a website and watched somebody's video purely for the content that I wasn't interested in buying the product. I go to the company that I'm aware of, I consume the message, and I convert. I'm not there to browse around in their video content. And so I believe that to be an assumption. And I pulled some data just for people to think, because if you assume that people are going to go to your website and then binge your content like it's Netflix, you may be wrong. And then if you don't figure out other distribution channels, you might just be creating a lot of potentially really high quality content that nobody actually sees. And so that's the risk. I pulled some data, so just so people know, from Refine Labs specifically. And so when we look at our actual website and the amount of video plays, I'm looking at plays, not plays that went for 15 seconds or plays that just literally they hit the play button and started watching it. On our website, and we have quite a bit of awareness, we had in the trailing 28 days, we had 87 video plays. Okay. And then we go to YouTube. And on YouTube, just to be clear, we have 533 subscribers, not a lot. And on YouTube, in the past 28 days, we had 1,900 views, which I can't do the math in my head, but looks to be about 20 times as much as on the website, with almost no subscribers. And then we looked at LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, we had in the same time period 134,000 video views, which is close to 1,340 times more than on the website. And so if you are not distributing content in the places that people already are, you create a huge risk of people not actually consuming the information. And the content experience platforms, because you want to be able to measure it, actually sort of push you to not distribute it in other places. They would distribute, I'm guessing, I don't know their messaging, but I'm guessing what they would do is they would have you put a link in your post that would then drive people back from LinkedIn to your website to consume the content, when most of those visitors are on mobile and are not going to go through your content experience platform on a mobile device when they're from LinkedIn. And so I've been pushing people against this decision because I think it structurally doesn't make sense. And I think that mindset wise, it makes you think that people are going to come to your website to consume your content. And most likely, I don't find, at least in our data and my experience across a lot of different B2B companies, I do not believe that to be true. And so that is a PSA for marketers that are considering it, or PSA for marketers that have already built that and are not distributing content in other places. You need to find ways to get people to consume the information in the places that they already are. Otherwise, you'll be waiting for people to find you, and they may not ever do that. And I would like a poll. I would like to do a poll here because I think it's interesting. And so we're in gallery mode. We're feeling good. In the past 28 days, have you been to a B2B company's website and consumed content on their website that was not a purchase-driven visit for more than 20 minutes? Raise your hand if you did. For the listeners, at least in the view that I can see, I got one. Okay, we got two. We got Victoria. Okay, so 2 out of 39. So that's something to think about for people. And I will maybe we'll take a question here.
Sure. I see, I think a new face, Blythe. You submitted a question in advance, and it's a great one. Do you want to come on and introduce yourself and ask your question? I will unmute you.
Sure. So I feel like this is my first opportunity to say first time caller, long time listener.
Welcome. So. We love the mic. We're matching. That's great.
Thank you. Got the boom Yeti mic all set up. So I'm kind of coming at this from a solopreneur perspective, where I manage B2B marketing for logistics clients. Mm-hmm. And I'm struggling with scaling both for myself and my clients. So I've been listening to the show for a while now, and it's a lot of great insight. I think where I'm struggling the most is, how do I apply these more or less, I guess, the majority of SaaS tactics to services-based industries. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we are
going to have so this is near and dear because it wasn't too long ago when I was in your seasons. This is going to be a fun conversation. It might be a little extended, and I can't wait for it. Number one, why did you choose logistics?
Because I started out as an executive assistant, and they needed marketing help, and they kind of just gave everything to me, which is sort of a good and a bad thing, because I was able to learn, sort of trial by fire. And this is still a very outdated industry in that regard. So I saw a lot of opportunity as far as like career expansion.
Okay. So then you kind of like EA, marketing inside of a logistics company, and then have moved external and doing it for multiple companies at once now.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a funny story. So for almost my entire B2B career, I worked in 2 different industries. I worked in industrial manufacturing. We sold things mainly to places that we sold hardware products to companies, but the more interesting one was medical devices. Those were the 2 industries that I entered in before SaaS. Medical devices was interesting because a lot of the products are capital purchase, big upfront cost, $25K to $1 million or more, and then a recurring revenue model based on the number of patients that are treated because of disposables, right? And so it has a recurring revenue model, big implementation cost, cost of switching can be high. And so the dynamics from medical device and SaaS were quite similar. And so that's why I've been able to move into it so quickly. Now, when I started my thing, I thought that I was going to sell to medical device companies because that was where all my experience was. And I went out there and I started, I had conversations with them. And what I learned is that nobody in that industry wanted what I was selling because they are stuck 20 years behind where we are right now. And so I eventually, after about a month, started to find that a different type of industry more so wanted the skills that I have. And so we got a lot more to go, but I think I really want to challenge you to think that perhaps it's the industry. Okay. So that's something. It was just like I started communicating my thoughts. I eventually got one SaaS client, and then started to move from there, and quickly figured out that all the things that I knew in medical device and all the foundational things that I had that most SaaS marketers don't have gave me a very large advantage in that industry. Okay. So now let's talk about, now we have the idea of that maybe the target could change in terms of the type of customer. Now, when you're working on the accounts, like, what are you doing?
It's basically everything. It's their website hosting, it's their maintenance, which has been a really great sort of recurring revenue stream for me is the website hosting and maintenance. And then on the other side, they want marketing services, but very few of them feel comfortable in front of the camera. They don't want to do any podcasts. It scares the crap out of them in order to even think like that. So I've started my own podcast. I've been a broadcaster for a few years now, but transitioned to logistics only podcast back in November. And I'm getting a lot of really great traction from it. And I'm trying to use my own experience as a case study for them in order to sort of ease that fear. And it's still an uphill battle, more or less, to where I kind of am questioning and even offering marketing services anymore, and just focusing on building the podcast side and as an income stream, and then just continuing the website and hosting revenue.
We're basically in the same place, right? Right at the moment, you are in a place with a type of customer where you are swimming upstream and they don't want to do the things that you're doing. And so you can try and continue to convince them and have a lot of trouble, or you can move to a place that already values the things that you're doing. I find it's just way easier to move to a different place, regardless of if it's a new industry for you. I've posted about this a lot. Industry experience is incredibly overrated. It's incredibly overvalued. If you have a brain and you know how to use Google and you know how to interact with people, which most people on the Zoom and everyone listening to this does, that you can go and learn a new industry in less than 6 months by entrenching yourself in the market, understanding the community, figuring out where the people are, understanding what they're talking about, going to the conferences and speaking events that they go to, looking on Google when you don't understand an acronym. It's just like, it's not that challenging. And so I would challenge you to think about that. Now now let's talk about scaling your business, right? So I would highly suggest that you at least explore different targets. The next thing you need to think about is how many clients can you take on, and how much are those clients willing to pay you? So that would be the next step. And you need to figure out, how do you get to a place where you have enough money to make a hire? Which when I did it, it was $15,000 a month. Like, I went early because I knew I was building a company. A lot of people would take the $15,000 a month. They're like, hey, I'm making 180K. I'll just chill. You know what I mean? And so if you're trying to scale, you need to have a scale. The most important thing at your stage is a repeatable customer acquisition process with a type of customer that values your service, is willing to pay top dollar for it, and stays with you as a customer. And so I think all of those things, it took me 6 months to figure that out. So this is not like, it might take longer for you, and that's perfectly okay. But my gut on this is that it is the type of customer you're going after.
That's good insight. Thank you for that. Because it is really a big time struggle, and the clients are there. They need the help, but they just don't want to follow the advice or the tips that I give over a long-term basis. They start out gung-ho, but then from there they sort of get fear installed on them.
Another thing for everyone listening, and specifically for you, if you are selling a service that does consulting on organic content, your retention rates will be bad. Because people like to think that they want to do it, and then when you actually show them what's required in order to have success, they don't.
Yes.
So
that's exactly what I'm experiencing right now.
Pretty much what happens every time. They'll be really excited about it for 2 weeks, and they'll realize, oh, like, I actually have to go in there and comment with people that might buy from me. Why would I do that? What's the ROI of this? I don't have time for this. And so another thing is to think about your product offering, because consulting on a podcast is a really tough thing, because the results are very, very deeply rooted in how much effort and how much talent the person that you're consulting with has. And so you don't have a lot of control over the actual outcome.
Good insight. Thank you.
Cool. Good to have you here, Blythe. Thank you for the question.
You.
All right. Alex, you submitted a question in advance as well around creative and demand gen campaigns. I'm going to bring you on so you can ask your question live. Unmute you.
Who we got in here?
There we go.
Nice.
How's it going?
Hey, Alex.
What's up, Alex? Good to have you here.
Good. Sorry, I got the home gym. I just finished up. Okay, so a question. Creative. I remember exactly what I want to talk to you about. So the context around this, I got to take a look at a AI-driven content generation platform today called Pattern 89. Not hyping them in any way, just sharing the context behind it. If you've got 20,000 a month in ad spend or more that you're running, check them out. Really cool. They have some really interesting tools that they're working with. But what I was thinking about was, you know, in all the talk that I've heard recently, the podcast last week with Gaetano, I'm curious, where and how do you guys create content and creative that's really impactful, especially putting it out into a demand gen pipeline where, you know, understanding that attribution might not always be there. So how is it that you're making really impactful creative? And that's something that I'm curious if you could share some insights.
Yeah, happy to do it. So just for the listeners here, I'm going to break this up into two segments. So there's content and there's creative. The creative is the actual art, the picture, the video, something like that goes into an ad. Content in a different way. So creative would be a subcategory of content in the way that I see it. And then content could also be written content. It could be long form video, audio, or things like that. But when I say creative, I'm thinking specifically a picture, video, or something like that goes into a paid media campaign. Okay. Now, when we do this, you mentioned attribution. You mentioned a couple of things. We've talked about how we use custom conversions. I will report that the attribution window has changed inside of Facebook as of January 19th, and we are noticing that less conversions are registering to the tune of about 32. Let me do the math in my head because it's 68 total. Yeah, 32% less conversions now that we've moved to a 7-day attribution window instead of the default 28 that we would normally use. So the reporting is less, but it's still there and it's still meaningful enough to make decisions. And when we think about creative, the initial root of the failure or success of creative is understanding your customer. I cannot preach this enough because we work with enough companies now, and the companies that have gone through a market research process and have validated messaging and know that it works. And we take that and the creative doesn't even have to be that good. The words matter a lot, right? And then just put a SAS screenshot, put a person there, put a green background or a blue background or whatever, and just put it in there. But it's the actual words and who you're targeting and whether or not that works. So step one is really understand your customers and have validated messaging. The next thing that we do is we start at the actual destination page. And so most likely we're going to send them to a feature product type of page. It could also be like more of a high level why or a home page. Like we start with the destination in mind, and then we work backwards based on the messaging inside of the creative. And so we might build a new landing page on its own, or we might be driving people to an already existing product page that we already know works. And then we actually get into it. Now, inside of the actual creative, we can pull because all of the messaging's already been created from that page, right? You have H1 at the top. You have a lot of other H1s or H2s. You have sub copy that can then be used for ad copy. And so to do that, it actually creates a more simple system where you can test a lot of variations because I can say, you know, this one down here, I can use social proof. I could use that testimonial. Anything that's on the page is fair game, and it's going to be relevant and consistent when someone lands on it. And then it comes down to design variation. That is one way that I really like to do it if we're going for like high volume, high spend SaaS, because we want to run quite a few variations of creative and we have a lot of options there. So that's a very simplistic way. And then you would run the ads and you could measure based on both engagement. Lately, I've been tracking the success of engagement on LinkedIn. And then I've been tracking the success just because LinkedIn targeting is more clear than Facebook oftentimes, especially if you're using things like lookalikes or algorithmic expansion. You can actually glean insights about, is this messaging resonating better than this messaging with CIOs? And you can get that, and we can give that back to the customer, and they see a lot of value in that. And then we can also measure across Facebook and LinkedIn to cross device or click through attribution to a demo request, which then is actually our key success metric. And so those are the two kind of ways. I'm happy to answer a follow-up kind of on the process, because I kind of went through it, but honestly, we don't make things ultra complicated, and we don't have customers that are looking for us to go and make a national TV or quarterly campaign.
Right.
So over time, we are going to build a deeper expertise in-house in creative, and we're going to continue to build our media, and we're going to build strategy, and we will put together very large campaigns that run for a quarter with tons of different assets that have a little things. And maybe it won't only be paid, and maybe it'll also be organic in other different places. And so we'll kind of we are moving to an area where we want to be the full provider of all of those things for a company. And so that's kind of where we're moving. But at the moment, we feel a more narrow outcome for them.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. On the front end there, I'm curious, obviously with your market research, not wanting to give away trade secrets there, but I'm thinking like customer persona, that's got to be a piece of the puzzle. If you don't mind, talking a bit about that, and I can share maybe where we come from. So when we put this together, we use a customer persona, but then we also use a buyer influence map. So I want to understand who within that decision maker, that stakeholder circle, is saying, go for it, and who's saying, whoa, stop, don't you dare. And all those different influencers and those different actors within that sphere. Beyond that piece, though, I'm curious, is there additional market research you're conducting? I know there's standard channels, excuse me, such as surveys, stuff like that. But effectiveness, I guess, is the question for me. If we're putting out a SurveyMonkey survey, does that actually translate into intent that we can turn around and capture and motivate to use in creative?
So I would argue that what we're doing right now is me doing market research better than running a survey out of SurveyMonkey. You know what I mean? I'm learning from all of you based on the questions that you ask, as well as all the things that you say, right? So this is a form of market research. Me going on sales calls is one. Me having podcasts with really smart people is another one. And so it's interacting with the market at a level where the market doesn't see you as a vendor, they see you as a peer.
Right.
And that's where you get the real insights. And so I typically push against buyer personas, because it's one person that did the research, try to simplify it as much as possible, and then push it down to the rest of their team. And the rest of their team needs to execute on a lot of these assumptions that are typically not correct. Like I've used a buyer persona before that was given to me by the VP of marketing or product marketing or whoever was doing it. And it was a combination of stereotypes. These people have a lot of tattoos. They do this, paired with all of the different pain points that we want to hear. And that's all a buyer persona was. Look at, Susie's over here. She has a lot of tattoos. She loves to hang out in the break room. She's, is lazy. And it's like, and then you actually go and talk to Susie, and she's out there crushing it.
Yeah. Rocks a white t-shirt.
Yeah. And so I push against buyer personas, because I feel like it's an excuse inside of companies for every marketer to not have a deep understanding of their customer.
So and I promise this will be my last follow-up question. I'll think of something for next week. But I'm curious then, how do you capture that and communicate that to the team in a format that's understandable and digestible by a creative and a copywriter, a website UI, UX person? You've got these different elements of the team, I'm assuming. How are you bringing that all together in a way that everybody goes, hey, I understand Chris is on the podcast. I know Chris is doing the interviews. I know your team is on here, so that's obviously a huge piece of that. But is there a standardized way that you're bringing that all together and communicating it out?
So I've been thinking about this since 2016, actually. I thought it would have been a great idea, and the company that I worked for at that time didn't want to do it. But now we are doing it, which is that we are recording all of the things that I'm both learning and what I think on a podcast. And then the people on our team listen to the podcast and understand my point of view. And that is the knowledge transfer, not a buyer persona. It has a ton more depth as well, and it's a ton more current, right? It gets updated 3 times a week. I've always wished, actually, I wished really badly in 2016 that for our sales reps that had no idea what the messaging was and were using assets from 3 years ago and, didn't understand what clinicians were like, that we should have built a podcast for the sales rep who was driving across Kansas to their next meeting so that they might be able to understand the material a little bit more. But the company wanted to fly them into New Hampshire once a year and put them through a training where they went through some training and got drunk 4 nights in a row. So,
priorities.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And I really appreciate that. And I think that actually offers some interesting insight, right? Because now there's a multi-direction that you can take a podcast. It doesn't always have to be an external facing tool. And I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris.
Yep. For companies that sell through distribution or through a partner network, you should definitely have a podcast for your partners or your distributors.
Yeah. And I'm even thinking like as a conduit, to your point, what you just mentioned, right? As a conduit between your marketing and sales team, or your marketing customer success, or you have all three. You have all three rotating and adding content and contributing into that. So sales can turn around and voice, what they're going through. Obviously, you might not want to record and post one-to-ones, but something in that format. Yeah, just excuse my spitballing there. I promised I'd be quiet after that. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, just think about all of the things that are getting done through this activity. Market research, building a community, word of mouth gets generated from it. We get to promote it. We create content for a podcast. It serves as team training. It is part of our event strategy. We've brought Gaetano and other people in as an influencer marketing, co-marketing thing. There's so many things that are getting done in one type of activity. And meanwhile, there are companies out there that are reaching for every single thing. We need all of this tech. Let's actually, we are not getting good results on display, but let's also do programmatic and buy another third-party tool and get all of these different ad things. And it's just like, you don't need all those things. You need a couple things that work really well.
Yeah, that I couldn't agree with you more. There's just so much you can get overwhelmed with.
Right on. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for a sneak peek in your gym as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Great questions. We have a few submitted in advance and a couple from people that just can't make it, but religiously listen to the podcast. So they said, if you ask the question, I'll hear it. Someone wanted to remain anonymous, but want some help with something that they are facing right now. So they provided a bunch of details. I'm going to break this down for you. Ready, Chris?
The anonymous questions are gotta be juicy.
Let's
do it.
Yeah. And he's gotten through, I think, 45 of the 90 episodes in the last few weeks. So he's jamming through the podcast and excited to have you answer his question. Okay. So, his company is B2B, but they're not a SaaS product. They are in the insurance space. It says 300 to 400 million ARR. ACV is very high, 1 million plus with multi-year agreements. Sales cycles very long, frequently over a year. A lot of decision makers, RFPs, brokers, highly relationship sort of driven traditional sales process. They have a few sales people that are sort of full cycle AEs, very small marketing team. It's this person and one other person, but then they have some additional design and creative support to help them. And he said, in listening to all the podcast episodes, he hasn't sort of heard this type of situation before. And he wants to know if you would use all of your traditional SaaS playbooks in this type of environment, or given the setting that he is in, if you would adjust the approach. He does also mention that he is really big on thought leadership, and he wants to double down on that as much as possible by creating a lot of quality content, but is curious to get your advice on sort of running a lot of the things that you say, or if you would make any adjustments given the context that he's in.
Yeah, so to clarify for people, when we're talking about a lot of the things that we're doing here, it is for sales-led, what I would call velocity SaaS or other recurring revenue models with high margins. Okay. And so when I say velocity, it means they're probably closing in 180 days, maybe less than 365. And as you start to get to larger, like $1 million deals in a year, the go-to-market motion that is needed in order to get that done is slightly different. Do I believe that long-term we will close $1 million deals through this podcast? Yes, I do. I do believe it, but it's not going to happen this year. And so if you need things to happen this year, I would lean into sales. And that's a really interesting thing that I've been thinking of recently is that if you want short-term results, then just do sales. And if you want to think about building a brand or doing other things that are going to drive probably better short-term outcomes as well, but you need to actually be disciplined in doing marketing. Now, what I would recommend here is a long-form organic podcast where you try and dominate your industry. And that's the only thing that I would think about doing in this situation. And the podcast, like just what we're doing right here, can be built on a lot of different pillars. You should have when you can do them again, you should have a live event strategy with people that insurance people really respect, where they show up and they talk and you record it and you interview them. And that becomes an episode of the podcast, as well as an event strategy and potentially a business development activity. You're already doing the event. You might as well film the content and make it a podcast as well. So events, you could do in the interim, you could do a Zoom like this, but you need to figure out how you create value for the types of companies that you're trying to sell to, which I find is the hardest part for a lot of companies, is that they can't get people on the Zoom because they don't know how to provide value in order to justify people sitting here for an hour. And then the last one is that you could interview your potential buyers. And that's a 3-pronged approach to a podcast, where if you went hard at it, that is a full-time job. And most likely the highest upside. Could you also run targeted ads on LinkedIn? For sure. I think that you could. Would you be able to measure the success of them unless you did direct response lead gen for a 500-day sales cycle? You would not be able to measure success of it. And based on what I heard, a couple marketing employees in a 300 million ARR company, you don't have a lot of budget and they're going to squeeze you to prove stuff. Another thing, this is a tangent for people, but the idea that you're selling $1 million deals and you have 2 marketing employees and you give them $5,000 a month is ridiculous. Look at what the customer acquisition cost is and then calculate it out to how long it's going to take marketing to get you a customer. And so those, I see that quite a bit too in early stage companies that set revenue targets for marketing with budgets that are literally impossible. So just to kind of tie a bow on this one, I would go podcast, which is mixed with a virtual, physical, hybrid event strategy that then gets recorded and moved into a podcast, as well as interviewing potential customers or prospects or buyers or whoever you want to do. That mix becomes a podcast, and it needs to be the best podcast in the industry. And so if you need to find somebody that works at some other company or is a different person, and you need to pay them $100,000 a year to be the host of your show because they are smart, I think that is a smart buy. I think a lot of companies I think there's a lot of companies listening to this where you are selling to, I want to make up an example that's not a customer. You are selling to CIOs, and nobody in your company knows anything about what it's like to be a CIO, or perhaps nobody in your marketing department knows what it's like to be a CIO. And I would go out and find a CIO that already creates content, and I would pay them $100,000 a year to be the host of my podcast. And I am not kidding. And for a growth stage, larger scale, 300 million ARR insurance company, to have a $100,000 employee that's hosts your podcast that becomes something that could be really valuable for you long term, I think that's an interesting buy. So
I like that last recommendation. We have another, I think, newer face, Victoria Salvador, with a really good question that I think you're really going to like. Victoria, I'm going to bring you on because I want you to explain all this context that you sent me to Chris. All right.
Thanks. Thank you very much. So bear with me because the question may seem very long, but essentially it's just to give you all the context. So my background is Marcom, pure Marcom and branding. So I get creative, I get targeting, I get engaging by understanding each persona at every step in their decision-making journey. However, this is actually the first time in my career, and believe me, I'm probably older than most on this podcast. I have been around the block in the marketing world quite a few times, but this is the first time in my career where I actually feel like I squarely sit on a sales team. Okay, so I am the beginning of a sales journey. Whereas
welcome
in the past,
to
I was welcome to B2B, exactly. So I was in not-for-profit before. I was in more of a traditional B2C world. So yes, welcome to B2B. So my question is then, how do I get this going? Like, I don't really understand how I'm going to trace the journey to the ROI clearly without just saying, coming in, I'm heading up this amazing team of talented individuals who know their shit, but I need to be able to say to my CEO and my VP, I need, I don't know, I'm going to make up a number. I need 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, not 1,500. So, and I'm making up numbers. It's actually not that, but so I need to heavily invest because that's the number. That's the magic number. Instead of just saying I need 20% more followers, which is the easy way to go. And also considering that I really don't have a huge, I've looked at the budget. It's not an unlimited pocketbook. Like I can't dig in. So I really want to demonstrate the value of my team's work. And I think that that's what is going to be asked of me, which is, again, very different than in the past where I was getting engagement. I was getting lovers of the brand to embark. And this is a very different world for me. So any advice, I will take it all.
We got the answer. But first, is it SaaS or something else?
It's SaaS.
Okay. And how big is the company and employees?
Around 80.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So your marketing team is like 4 to 6?
Bang on.
Okay, cool. Okay, good to know. So the easiest way to measure this is to be very, very simple in the method of measurement because companies all over the globe are ridiculously overcomplicating this process.
Okay.
And so the easiest way to measure it is to just look at how many people come to your website and say, hey, I would love to talk to your sales rep. And then you give it to the sales rep and then how much pipeline gets created from that and how much revenue gets created from that. And so any basic marketing automation system and a CRM would be able to accomplish that measurement with specific filters and tags, which is there's something on Google or someone else that would be better to answer that stuff than I would. But you can just tag it and then track it all the way through. And then all you're trying to do is just have, through your increase in LinkedIn followers or through your email marketing or through your live Zoom, that you create more people that come to the website and say, hey, I would love to talk to your sales rep and actually become customers. And it becomes very black and white. And then at the end of that process, you look at how much did we spend? How much do we spend on advertising? And then additionally, in a separate bucket, how much do we spend on advertising and all of marketing? So you have advertising customer acquisition cost, you have advertising cost per SQO, and then you have total marketing customer acquisition cost and total marketing cost per SQO. And then you make a decision about whether the cost is worthwhile for the outcome. And that's based on growth targets and, level of funding and growth ambitions and a lot of different factors. And so it becomes very simple when we go in and some companies have 0 demos. We try actually not to, whether it's a demo or some other type of conversion, if there's 0, we actually try not to work with those companies anymore because the analogy I've been going is I'm not over here to start fires. I'm here to pour gasoline on fires that are already lit. Right. And so we're looking for companies that have 30 demos a month and they're going through and they're going to win 3 of those customers. And if they have a 10% win rate from raw demo, I can figure out how to get, I can figure out how to 2, 3, 4X that with the same 10% win rate And that's way better than going out and doing other activities that B2B companies like to do. And so in terms of measurement, that's what I would recommend. That's what I figured out when I worked at a company and went from me with a $500 budget to a $2 million budget and 5 people on my team within 18 months is just frame it up to a CEO. It's like, look, we got $3 million net new and 1.2 of it came through marketing. And we spent this much on sales, which was 25x more than what we spent on marketing. We spent 3% of the budget on marketing and we got 33% of the revenue. Can we please spend more money here?
That's pretty straightforward. So maybe I'm just overthinking this.
I think so.
It's just math.
It's math on the measurement, and it's math and art on driving more people to do the things that you want.
That's it. So the art, I got the art. That's my world. That's where I come from. So the metrics, I don't need to overthink it. It's simple. That simple. All right. Good stuff.
Right on. Thanks for your question. I think that helped a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. Great question, Victoria. Thank you for coming on tonight. It was good to have you. I want to ask a question from Brandon Redlinger. He actually submitted this for the Gaetano show and we didn't get to it. But I think it's an interesting one. And then I think Jess has a question. We can bring you on next. So Brandon asked, I used to sell to marketers. So all of my LinkedIn content was about B2B marketing. And I built up a decent audience of about 9,000 followers, all marketers. However, he just took a new position and he's now selling into sales professionals instead of marketing professionals. So he's wondering how you would approach organic LinkedIn posting going forward. He's thinking if he starts just posting sales content, his current audience won't care as much. But if he posts, marketing content as he has been, it's not going to get in front of his new buyers. And he also wants to note that, another reason he does want to stay connected to like-minded marketers. So he doesn't want to alienate them, but he's wondering how you would think about navigating that transition so he can be successful in his new role and leverage LinkedIn as he has been.
So I think you can still leverage LinkedIn no matter what. A couple of days ago, I posted a post about what I think SDR should be doing. And I post things about career. I think that I think you're overthinking it is the short answer. If you came in hard pushing your sales product, I think you would alienate a lot of people, but I've watched you post content, Brandon, and it's usually pretty good. And so some ideas about what you could do. One, you could post things about how salespeople could work better with marketers from a marketer's perspective. Think about how you can weave in your marketing expertise and bring value to salespeople. That's one. You could also, if you wanted to take that a step further, you could have a podcast or anything like that, and you can start interviewing sales reps for whatever, some type of thing, and you can somehow allow them, he has an audience, so he can leverage that audience to get access to some people and then see if the people that are in the sales side will actually help you with distribution. So if you help them create content, oftentimes if the content is good and they feel good about it, they'll publish it, which would then bring awareness to you. And so those are a couple of different options. And then I think in the last case is that I'm watching a lot of people that have established LinkedIn audiences that move to a new type of buyer that are struggling with this. Megan and I's very good friend, Justin Welsh, has a strong position on this, which is that you should stay in your lane. You shouldn't chase your buyers with your audience. And so I don't have a clear stance, but that was what he said on it. I think that logically some of that stuff makes sense, right? Because how long are you going to be selling to salespeople? Based on the statistics, it's probably not more than 3 years. And so in 3 years, when you have 45,000 followers, you're going to have to do it again. And so I don't think there's a clear-cut answer here, but I would have you think about it, because I would potentially keep posting marketing content, continue to build an audience with that, and then I would start to weave in some sales content. And honestly, there's a lot of salespeople that want to learn marketing. I don't know how much. I don't know what the amount of people. I wish LinkedIn's analytics were better. That's a shout out to LinkedIn to figure it out. I would love to know where the job functions are based on my followers so I could tell you, but my guess is that at least 20% of my followers are in the sales department. It could be even higher than that. And so salespeople are hungry to learn more about marketing, especially if you talk about them, how to use marketing to build your own pipeline, which is a huge gap in B2B sales. B2B AEs need to figure out how to build their own pipeline. And you, Brandon, have a lot of information about how they could do it. And so perhaps that's another angle. I just laid out like 3 or 4 angles, but the short answer is I think that you're overthinking it. You should just go and learn.
Awesome. Jess, let's bring you on to ask your question. And Charlie from the UK couldn't join us tonight, but he sent in a really fun question. I'm going to sneak.
And we gotta make sure we hit this thing on the agenda because it was a spillover from last week, and we can't let it spill over again. But let's take Jess's question first.
All right, I'll try and be quick.
Oh, you're good. We got all the time.
If you wanted to inherit a really large ad account, what's your audit process for trying to make heads and tails of someone else's work? I just figured, given that you look at a lot of CRMs and ad accounts regularly, you might sort of have some go-tos of this is how you sort of sort out what's working, what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's go through it. $1 million a month across Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google, but this is a B2B cybersecurity company, so 98% of the budget went to Google and LinkedIn. And then they were trying to experiment with Facebook, and they ran a couple experiments, and they didn't get good enough leads. There's too many Gmails, and so they gave up on Facebook. So they're running on these 2 things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at Google because it's a black and white channel. I'm going to go to that top little button in the thing that says tools, and then I'm going to click on conversions, because the first step is to figure out what are they trying to do. And when you go into the conversions, you're going to see probably like 10 or 15 different things: report download, newsletter sign up, demo requests, contact us, this different ebook, 30-second time on site. And there's going to be a ton of mixed conversions. That's what a lot of places are going to do. And then you're spending $1 million a month. So I'm going to go and look at the campaigns, and I'm going to go and look at what they're bidding on. And then I'm going to look at the conversions. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to segment by conversion category, which will then tell me based on the campaigns what is actually happening, which conversions are happening for each campaign. And what you're going to find is 99% of the conversions are report downloads, and very few of them are any actual business outcomes. And then what I will do is I will go over to Salesforce, and I will look at all of the people tagged with a Google ad UTM, because it's going to be last touch, and visible or whatever they're using is going to credit on last touch a significant amount to that channel. And then we're going to look at what happens in the pipeline. And because 99% of them were report downloads, almost 0 opportunities going to be created, and they won 1 deal and they spent $1 million a month. And so I'm going to know that this is not working. The numbers are different, but this is not different than when I go in and do this. Okay. Like the number, it might be 200K instead of $1 million a month, but it's not very much different. I'm telling you exactly what I see. And then we know that it's not driving revenue, but it's driving, whatever it is, 50,000 leads at $20 a lead, $20 per report download. And so the agency or the internal marketing team is only incentivized to drive as many leads as possible through that. And so they're hitting their goals. They don't even care what the job titles are. They just want someone to fill out the form that has an email address. This is happening. And then when you actually look and you see how bad it is, then you can go back into the ads account, and you can, what I would do is I would look through the campaigns and see if there's anything to learn. And so what keywords are in there? I would filter the keywords by high intent modifiers, software, pricing, vendor, something like that. A lot of companies don't even bid on those keywords. They just go broad match to a broad term. And so they might not even be in there. The next thing that I would do is I would export all of the data over the last 12 months of the search terms report that includes conversions, but I would filter only to demo conversions. And then I would export the search terms report, and then I would filter based on the conversions of a demo with high intent modifiers like pricing, software, vendor, things like that. And then I would look at what keywords I could pull out of there that actually drive some type of impact. And then I would be able to take those learnings. It was a very expensive amount of money to learn that there's a couple keywords that include software and pricing that are actually driving demos. And I would take those, and it would be easier to start over than to try and fix that mess. So I would most likely start over. On the LinkedIn side, so that was $500,000 that was going over there, and then we have another $500,000 that's happening on LinkedIn. And the only thing that a company is doing that I imagine there's someone out there spending $500,000 on LinkedIn, but I've never seen it. And so what they're doing is they're driving report downloads for the exact same reason. The person running it, whether it's an agency or an internal person, is only credited based on how many leads they get with email addresses. And for some companies, they'll say, but wait, it needs to be at a company that's more than 200 employees, and it needs to be at director level and above. And that's considered a sophisticated company in this example. And so then they can just use their little LinkedIn targeting. They can get ebook downloads, and then they will be able to move them into a sales cadence. And you do the exact same process. But when you're in LinkedIn, it's what is the objective? Go through the campaigns. What are they trying to do? It's almost always for a B2B SaaS company, a lead gen ad for a mid-funnel content download. And you can just go and look, and you can measure what the success of that is. I look at the targeting, see what they're trying to do. Some people I go in there spending $100,000 a month, and they're only targeting by industry. If you work in financial services, you deserve our ad. And it's like, oh my God, how much wasted money is happening there? And so the exact same thing can happen because there's a conversion and it's somehow pushing into a marketing automation system to run nurtures or do a sales cadence. You can then track exactly that all the way to pipeline and revenue. The outcomes are going to be the exact same because you're doing the exact same thing in two different places. You're trying to get a report download from two channels. You're going to have a low efficiency there. Calculate customer acquisition cost, decide how, calculate and quantify how bad it's working. And then you kind of have your answer. On LinkedIn, the only thing that I might look at to take and move with me is the targeting. Maybe there's something that they did, but oftentimes there's not. And that's the process. Reverse engineer the strategy inside of the ad platforms, map that to the results at the business level. It's very easy to do that because every single company will only run lead gen on these channels. So you can track it all the way to revenue. And then you track it, and then you present the data, and you take anything that you can learn out of it, which honestly is not very much if you adopt a strategy like what we have.
Awesome. That's really helpful.
Did you take one over?
I've applied for a job, and they've just for a big ad account bit, and it's just a little bit daunting if I get it to then have to go through it all. So I just thought you do this day in, day out. So
yeah, you don't have to go through every keyword in AdWords. You don't have to do those things because it's for a good account, you might need to do that. But my guess is you look at conversions, you realize the conversions are not measuring the right things, and then you can kind of do the process that I set. And for the people listening, sorry, I just want to get this in here. Yeah. For the people listening that may want to apply for a job at Refine Labs, I literally just told you how to ace one of the parts of the process. So there you go.
You want to hit that second agenda item?
Sure. We'll see where we get to it. My memory's a little fuzzy since it's been on the agenda for like 10 days.
Good question. So we can go back to those whenever you'd like.
Yeah. I think this one will be quick, but maybe it sparks a couple of questions because I actually think that this opinion, it's not what's happening right now, and people might not agree with it. And honestly, I'm putting this out here as a thought, and that's it. So, what parts of B2B marketing can be outsourced? We asked this. I get this asked a lot. It started, to be honest, when I started talking about the idea that you shouldn't outsource your content. And then what happened? A bunch of content agencies started yelling at me. The reason that you shouldn't outsource your content is because you, the person that works in the company, must have a deep level of customer intimacy that cannot be matched, that no agency could replicate. If you go and read agency content, it is surface level stuff with keywords for SEO, or it is surface level put in a pretty ebook for lead gen. and nobody is consuming that, and it is not moving the needle for your buyer to get them closer to buying. It's just collecting email addresses. And so the thing that you cannot outsource is having a deep, intimate understanding of your customers. And that's what I believe. And so some of those roles would be, like product marketing would be very challenging to outsource. Content creation would be very challenging in my view you can outsource post-production, but not the actual thoughts. The things that I think can be outsourced are things that do not require customer intimacy. So I think what we actually, we call ourselves a demand gen agency, but what we actually do is we distribute information in the best way possible, and we know how to measure it against revenue outcomes. And because we know how to measure it against revenue outcomes, and other companies won't do it because they don't know how, that we have a huge advantage. And so I think things that do not require customer intimacy is the thing that you can outsource. Additionally, I think that companies should highly consider outsourcing components that bring innovation into your company, because innovation, it gets inhibited inside of companies. Companies are built to actually stop innovation, believe it or not, because of all of the restrictions and metrics and fear of failure and a lot of the other things that we talk about. And so those are some of the things that I think could be outsourced. But it ultimately comes down to, and this is not just in marketing. I think we could talk about this in a lot of different functions. Let me think of a different example. I think sales training used to be a big thing. I think that it's dying now. I don't really know that market that well, but let's just pretend it was 1998. Like, having a sales trainer help your sales team was a good idea. Like, soon to be, like today, having somebody that really understands a specific industry to help you recruit might actually be a good thing and does not require a full-time employee. So what I see long-term, it's not going to happen anytime soon, is that companies will have little like hubs inside with internal employees that manage external experts that provide frameworks, innovation, and expertise. And the people internally provide a deep level of customer insights that cannot be matched externally, because customer insights and customer experience is going to be all that matters. More so than your product. And I talked about it on a podcast recently. I'm going to keep dropping it now. If you look at any MarTech category, if you look at any SaaS category, there is feature parity and product parity everywhere. The products in each category are not that much different. If you choose one over the other, most likely you're going to see no difference besides the user interface. And so I want, mostly brands and people listening afterwards to understand that marketing and customer experience and understanding your customers will be the driver long term, because products will converge on themselves until they're almost exactly the same. And they're going to converge on themselves, and then they're going to get consolidated into larger suites. They're going to keep getting consolidated, and then we'll go consolidation, and then we'll go fragmentation. And so just tying a little close to this one, we need to prioritize over everything being really close to our customers. And I'm really interested. I want to do a poll, but I don't think this is the right place to do a poll. But let's take a note or figure out how to figure it out later. Is because I've been talking about this for 24 months now, and I've been very loud about it. I want to know if people have actually changed their behavior based on this thing, because I do not see it. And I'm not calling out people on the Zoom. Please do not take it that way. But if I look broadly around the market with a lot of people that listen to my content, I am not seeing that behavior change. And I'm really interested as to why.
Few people making comments about a few things you could outsource, but everyone's agreeing with a lot of your points there.
Nice. We'll see what happens. Thanks, people. Appreciate you.
Yeah. I want to bring on Anna. She had a great question. I'm going to unmute you, Anna. You had one from last week too, but I know you have one for today. So if you want to sneak in both, you can have
Welcome
Yeah.
back.
Thank you. I'll start with the one I had for today. So I'm leading the marketing efforts at an ed tech company, SaaS company, and we're having like pretty near constant like feature releases or product upgrades that are rolling out. It's a startup, they're relatively new, so they're coming out with a lot of stuff that all fits under like the same umbrella of a product tool. But I think about it like HubSpot, how they have like social media, ads, blogs, like that. It's just a lot of different like features that all relate to each other. But every time one of those comes out, I'm met with like, what's our marketing campaign with this? Like, how are we gonna like sell this out there? Like, do we have collateral ready? The website pages that I spend so much time trying to just keep up with these releases that I feel like we've lost any sort of linear marketing strategy to like really like build awareness of the company as a solution provider in this space. So I think I'm looking for advice in terms of how to respond when we're getting all these releases and being asked to always deliver marketing campaigns for them.
Is this a feature or a sellable individual product? It's a feature, right?
It's like a module, I think would be the best way to describe it. So like they could sell a single module, but it's such a low MRR that I think they have an idea that like and I don't know if it's necessarily working, but they like want to land and expand. So they like are like, well, if we can hook them to want to get a demo for this module, we can sell them on a bunch of stuff then.
Yeah, I would highly encourage. I had Rand Fiskin on the podcast yesterday. It should be released soon. It was great for all the people that wanted to see that. Thank you, Matthew, for recommending it. His book hammers home the importance of packaging, which is something that I think you need to think about, because this whole piecemeal thing actually can really fail. So that's something to think about. Profitwell also has a really great strategy. And I had Patrick Campbell, ironically enough, on the podcast on Friday, and they produce a lot of content on packaging and pricing and thinking about how to include a value metric as the method to expansion and increased net revenue retention, as opposed to add-on feature things. There we go. We got some people with the Lost and Founder book. I love that book. But let's assume that part of the equation is out, and we have to deal with that reality. And let's talk about your question specifically. How often are these things coming out?
Every like month, there's a new one at least, like at the minimum.
Yeah, the risk here, and I think there's an easy example to this, is becoming Zoho. Anyone around here know Zoho? The poor man's Salesforce? Like, anyone know about this? And they have a ton of different modules, and it's so like disjointed and gross, and nobody likes it except for the people that can't afford Salesforce. So it's coming out once a month. I would consider the idea of making a compromise with your team where they must pick the one that's most important each quarter. Okay. So let's just pretend that compromise happens, and we have once a quarter. In my view, a once a quarter product update is a marketer's dream. I've worked with some customers that haven't launched a new type of product in 2 years. And so it gives you a reason to go out and communicate. I think having one once a quarter is smart. And if you had enough of a demonstrated success at once a quarter, and you had a system to do it, that you could actually get to a level where you could do it once a month. And so if you were going to do it once a quarter, I love the idea of taking the old stale like playbook for a product release from a company from 1995 and making it very modern, right? And so what a company would do, actually 1995 is too early, let's say it's like 2007, that they would make a press release and they would put it on the news section of their website. Then they would publish it, and then they would also publish it on the wire, and nobody on the wire would pick it up because nobody cares, and nobody would visit the news section on the website. And so they would do all that work for nothing. Now, let's say that you had the one on the news, and I did this in 2016 and had really great results. So I know it can work, and we still do it for customers now with product releases. You could take whatever you would write in that press release, and then you might need to modify it so that it doesn't sound so stuffy and professional, and make it more translated to what your buyer cares about. And then I would run that as a owned PR. Like you can control your own PR. I would argue that what I post on LinkedIn is an owned PR channel, right? It's just not third party. And so you can also do that with paid through a brand. So I would run, you know, blah, 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 ed tech company releases social media listening or whatever it is. And I would drive them to that press release. And then after the press release, there'd be a big button. If you have enough assets, maybe once a quarter, you can do it. And the button would say, click here to see how it works. And they would click there and they would go to a video that's a 2-minute explainer about how that feature works. And then you could figure out your conversion path from there. Just know that they're on mobile. But if it's, you know, low touch, maybe it's a self-serve and you could figure out how to do that. And so you could do the press release and then you could follow up the press release with something that's a little bit more hard hitting promotional, like some of the creative graphic design type of stuff that we talked about before, with variations of messaging and value propositions targeted at those people. And then the last is you could send the press release, or you could send the assets or something like that via email to, I would say, the whole database that's relevant. Customers and non-customers, especially if there's an expansion opportunity. And so the mindset that needs to happen in product releases for people is to think about it like you're a news reporter, not a seller. And so you are reporting the news that the feature came out, and you're communicating in a way that is objective and as you are reporting the news, as opposed to trying to convince someone about how good it is. And I've been taking that mindset for 5 years, and it just works a lot. It just works a lot better. It also changes it changes the things that you do, because the goal of a product launch is to make people aware that the product exists. And so treating it like a news reporter has been a really interesting comparison for me.
That's really helpful. I think limiting it to a quarterly effort will make it a lot more feasible to do that. Because I think I've been like chasing my tail a little bit, just trying to keep up with all the releases, that it's made it like impossible to do any well.
Mm-hmm. And you can make the argument that if you're able to do it once a quarter, we can focus on the one thing and we can make a larger splash, so to speak, right? Yes. So when depending on how important the launch was and how much we were going to spend behind it, I could have like 6 to 10 set assets of a campaign that would happen for 3 months. You know, major product announcement, major clinical trial, major integration. You can build so many different stories and assets around that. The press release, the video, a case study of a customer that used it as a beta user, the testimonial quote, a video of somebody speaking about the category of what you do and how it means is more of a thought leadership type of organic top of the funnel play. There's just a lot of different variations depending on how small or large you want to make the campaign. And ultimately, how small or large you want to make the campaign comes down to how important is it for the business and what's the budget.
Thank you.
Cool. I have a quick customer success tip on new features too, just in addition to this. Especially if you're going to be moving to like a quarterly cadence to summarize releases from a marketing perspective. Whenever I'm running a CS team, if you guys are releasing that often, it's very likely you're getting a lot of requests and customer feedback on specific features. And so especially for your top sort of segment of customers, CSMs typically will have some type of record, or they will know what they've asked for. And some of the best customer moments, or if you can go back to your customer and say, hey, 3 months ago, you requested this feature and we just released it. I wanted to personally let you know about that. It's a little less scalable, but it's a suggestion you can make to that other team. And potentially there are ways that you can do that with your top 100 customers, your sort of most valuable segment. And that can be happening as features are released throughout the quarter. So you are having some really targeted outreach, and or CSMs will know like, oh, this one customer is going to love this. So I think that it needs to be, I always sort of had a marketing angle there, but also sort of a personal touch point from the CSM side of things can also be really impactful as well. So just to throw that into the mix.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll definitely bring it up with my CSM team, because I think that could significantly help us with these customer communications and not just making all like mass marketing outreach.
Do you have a second question?
I don't want to hold up the time for everyone, so it's good, but this was really helpful.
Okay. We'll see you next week for another one then.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
thank you.
Thanks, Anna. So Pete has a question. I'm going to bring Pete on. And I see you got one too, Bob. We can get to you next.
What's up, Chris?
Pete, what's up, my man?
How are you?
Would love to market your product.
I know we got to
cool
talk.
thing.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so for the audience, I work at Avid, media, entertainment, every major TV show, movie, news, broadcast, etc. As Chris knows, pretty much the majority run through Avid. We'll leave it at that. So my question for you, Chris, and the group is, especially in the tech world, right? B2B partner marketing. Sorry, you see my son. B2B partner marketing is huge, right? Channel marketing partner. So Chris, my question's less related to like affiliate marketing programs, which if you follow our brand, we do a lot of that. Mm-hmm. It's more around resellers, distributors. So kind of cut to, I guess my question is, what role or importance do you think partner marketing plays today, especially for high tech companies, and how do you optimize it? Kind of a broad question, but I'm purposely kind of keeping it broad.
Yeah, I like it. Can you give me one layer deeper on how the partner feels it? Because it's not like a what do you call it? It's not, what's the garage? What's the oh my God, I care. The store, it's Guitar Center. It's not a Guitar Center. What is it?
Yeah.
How does the partner how does the partner add value through the customer journey?
Yeah, it's for us, it's one of two ways, but like in high tech, it could be, right, I'm Dell EMC, I'm reselling EMC's cloud servers, whatever it is. EMC is basically paying a certain amount of discounted money for that reseller sell products, right? That's one model. And the way you typically go to market for that is, co-marketing dollars. You might do joint webinars, et cetera, some of the stuff that I'm sure you'll go into. For our model, it's a combo of two things. We pass leads, right? So we generate roughly about 300 to 400 contact us leads a week. A certain portion of those we route to partners based on, we have tiers. We've talked about this, right? We have a certain amount of leads that go to web store. We sell those directly. We have strategic accounts like CNN, BBC, whatever it is. We sell those direct. For the middle of the road, like your mid-size type of leads, we will pass those to a Guitar Center or a Sweetwater, Hal Leonard, some of these sites some of you might be familiar with. So I guess the question is, how do you optimize that, right? Like, obviously, some of the feedback we get is some of that, some of those contact us leads, even though they're what you and I, what we all want, right? People come to our site saying, hey, I want to talk to somebody. Those are crap. Vice versa, they give us co-marketing dollars, et cetera. And I would say by default, we do a lot of virtual events and co-marketing, but my gut is there's room to optimize and improve it. So I'm curious. I'm just curious where your head's at.
Yeah. Do you mind going on mute? I love seeing your son there.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries at all. My answer is going to be out of left field on this one, but it really is what I believe, which is that if you market to the end user and the end user pulls the product through, then you don't need to do a lot of partner marketing because the partner's getting the things that they need. They just need to be educated. And so it becomes more of an account management sales relationship at that level and not a lot of marketing effort if you prioritize the customer. I watch companies all over the place that do no marketing over the top to their customers, and they only build relationships with their distributors, and their distributors do not push the product enough into the market in order for it to be successful. That happens a lot. And so I spend almost no effort focusing on the distributor who sits in the middle. And I spend all my effort focusing on the customer, and the customer will pull it through distribution. And when customers pull products through distribution or come to your partner, VAR, integrator, whatever it is, and ask for the product, and they get a lead either from you or from the market, they start to prioritize your products more because it helps them sell more. And so I've never found that. I think there's a angle to educate the integrator, partner, whatever that is, through a podcast or something like that, but it has to, especially with companies that probably carry as many SKUs as you, it has to be really good. And so I think that might be a challenge given all the other things, but you're Avid, you guys could get that shit done, I think. But I guess the short answer is potentially think less about the person that sits in the middle, which honestly, I don't think it will be that long. I'm good. Guitar Center is in a different spot. For other companies, it could happen faster. That companies cut out their distribution and go direct to consumer on everything. And so would love to answer a follow-up there, because I'm sure that wasn't as detailed, but I guess 2 points here. One caveat: I don't work through a ton of partner marketing stuff because I care only about the customer. And that's the main caveat. So I'm sure you have a follow-up here, and I would love to talk through it.
No, let me digest it. I think that's a good start. I like where you're going with it. I see Victoria's point around. I mean, there's broader channel marketing, Chris, which I'd love to. Let me process the question for maybe next week, because I'd be curious what you and the group's thoughts are, and just the way the B2B tech world kind of goes about. I mean, the biggest B2B acquisition strategy for a lot of tech companies is channel and partner marketing, right? And
yep, and it depends on certain things, right? Like there's a ton of IT related companies that are slaves to AWS and Microsoft.
Yep,
slaves.
1000%. So I love to dig deeper into this topic. We talk a lot about content, SEO, and paid, right? I think channel is one of those tricky things when you talk about customer intimacy and all the things that you and this group are adamant on. Love it. But it's easy to fall victim when you have a channel sales organization, a couple hundred reps, have massive quotas and budget and incentives tied to channel marketers, channel sales and channel efforts, and you're kind of like slave to that, to your point. So yeah, we can dig deeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge risk to a lot of businesses that are in that position, because, and I've been with companies that have exclusive distribution with one nationwide distributor, and you have little control over your business, which is scary. I know that that's probably not the situation with you, but there are companies, like there are IT companies where, if they do something with AWS, then Microsoft's going to cut them off. And then Microsoft cuts them off, 40% of the revenue falls out the bottom right away. Yep. And so like those are not good situations to have a business built on reliance of a different business. Yeah, I don't think AWS cares about that $4 million ARR IT SaaS company.
Probably not. Yeah. And then I don't want to take up any more time, but another question I'll send through next week, Chris. I'd love to talk about affiliate marketing, your opinion on that, specific affiliate marketing for B2B.
Yeah, I would honestly save that. We're going to do something with Gaetano. Gaetano knows that a lot better than I do, and he does a lot of it. So whenever we do the next event, which I think we're planning for early February, because I think he could go for hours, and honestly, he's way deeper in it than I am.
Cool. Thanks, bro.
Cool. Good to see you, man. And it was good to have an appearance from your son as well.
Yeah.
For that. I think it's Bob time. Bob, you want to come on and ask your question? I'm unmuting you.
Bob, what's up, brother? Good to see you. We didn't see you there for a couple of weeks.
I've been around. I think I was in the background there. Hey, so I'm allocating like half of my budget I've been using for Facebook to try a couple different things. From I'm taking it away from like my secondary target and trying to get more of my primary target type. Okay. So I spent a couple $100 on LinkedIn before I pulled that ad today. That turned out to be a gargantuan waste of money. And then
LinkedIn, just for the people listening here, it doesn't matter what your daily budget is on LinkedIn. LinkedIn will spend it as quickly as possible. I've had budgets in there for $1,000 a day, and at 8 a.m. it's gone. So we spend a lot of time. I turn off the budgets overnight and I turn them back on during business hours because of how badly they pace their budgets. This is basic. I've called out LinkedIn on several things today. This is basic stuff, LinkedIn. You are a large company with a lot of people spending money on your platform, and you need to innovate on your product. Okay. Sorry, Bob. Let's get back to you.
I was really surprised that, the reach and the cost per reach. I know you've talked about it before, but it was like 25 times the cost with was 30x less landing page hits. So
yep.
it made almost no sense. So after a couple $100, I stopped that test. I was just curious to see if I could better target that primary target. So I'm also thinking about what you're talking about with the YouTube pre-roll. And so I was curious about, number one, you kind of know my market a little bit at this point. I'm thinking I can target opticians with Google keywords and things like that. So do you have a suggestion on, the type of ad format that works best, whether it's high production value like KOL videos or short attention grabbing clips like 15 to 30 seconds with the diagnostic images that worked really well on Facebook? I'm just curious if you have experience you can share there. Like it's kind of nuts and bolts, whether a title banner or subtitles, in a 16:9 format. If you kind of have any nuts and bolts to kind of save me a process there, would appreciate it.
Yeah. So on the targeting, high intent search query retargeting based on your website pixel. And then lastly, for some of your things, there must be people in that industry that have YouTube channels that are large, that are focused on exactly what you do, right? I don't know, let's just say optometry, like there needs to be a couple people that have strong YouTube channels that are optometrists that make content for optometrists, and you can target at those channels.
Okay.
And so
I was thinking of retargeting as well. So, we've been running the Google Analytics pixel on the page for quite some time now. So I'm thinking all those should be able to be retargeted, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And wait for the episode from Rand Fiskin, which we recorded yesterday. So it'll probably be out early next week or over the weekend, where we talk about some of the nuances inside of Google, which turns almost, and Facebook does the same thing, just for the record. And LinkedIn does the same thing for the record, is they have all of the checkboxes on by default. One of the big checkboxes in YouTube is this idea of audience expansion, which sometimes works on Facebook. We've found that it's actually terrible on YouTube and just wastes 95% of your money. And so be careful and make sure that checkbox is off. It's on by default, because that'll go and reach for people outside of the audience. And when you sell a B2B product, it's just going to start to get really messy because Google doesn't know. Now on the content, now that we figured out the targeting on the content side, what we recommended and what I recommend is, if you were going to do a testimonial or a high production type of video that uses someone that's like your customer, I'm Susan, I'm an optometrist and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a user of this, I was struggling with this pain point, which optometrists struggle with. And then I found this blah, blah, blah company. In that first 5 seconds, you need a brand mention toward the end, and you either need a pain point or a persona call out so that they know it's for them. And then you tell the rest of the story. And most likely it should be, I think it should be more bottom funnel type of, product marketing, value proposition type stuff.
Okay. You have a time limit kind of constraint you go with pre-roll, like a minute or 30 seconds or?
I think as long as the video is engaging, you could go for I've seen 5-minute pre-rolls. So I think as long as the video is engaging, the length is less relevant. I've also stopped inside of my Facebook feed before and watched a 9-minute video that was an ad. You know what I mean? And so I think it ultimately comes down to, does the content justify the length?
Sure. And do you have a benchmark that I know you said it's ridiculously less expensive, in terms of CPM or cost, or however it's calculated based off of how much they watch or what they take an engagement. Yeah, kind of have a benchmark. I could tell you on Facebook, like my landing page conversions are about $1, and the CPM is like $10. So is there kind of like you have a rough conversion you would expect?
Yeah, so it gets broken down to cost per view if you're looking for a comparison against CPM. And so cost per view, I'm looking at 1 to 3 cents, and a view is not just a start. I think it has to be later. I don't know if it's 3 seconds, 5 seconds, or 15 seconds. It's something like that.
Right.
And then from a CPC standpoint, it's really comes down to targeting and quality of the asset, and then the CTA. And so for those, like, I'm happy in the $1 to $5 range, depending on who I'm going after and how much the product costs.
Okay. On Facebook, my videos are somewhere between like 10 to 20 cents.
Yeah.
In terms of like a through view, which is like 75% of it or whatever it is. 90%.
On YouTube, you need to remember that the pre-roll ad is coming before someone already wanted to watch something, right? And so the people do click, and we see them click, and we see people convert on a demo, and I have UTMs and I know that they're the right people. So I know that it's working, but you need to understand why they were there in the first place. They were there to watch this video that wasn't yours, and then you put yours in front of them. So you most likely will pay a lower cost per view because the view is going to happen no matter what. And then you'll pay a higher CPC because they actually want to watch the video that they came for. And so when you think about it, I think a lot about, and I've been thinking a lot about it in every ad platform, this is a huge insight for people, is that you don't necessarily need the click. That somebody seeing the video and having a better impression of the pain point that you solve when they were going to YouTube and you paid 1 cent for it is great.
Right.
And so as I continue to look at these channels and continue to spend more and more time looking at the difference between click-through and view-through attribution, and not on retargeting audiences, for the record, for people that are going to call me out on that one, for cold targeted audiences, click-through and view-through, a majority of it is view-through within a pretty short attribution window because the value is native to the channel. They don't need to leave in a time when they didn't want to. It's been a fascinating dynamic for me to understand better and better over this year.
Perfect. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Cool.
How you feeling, Chris? We got a couple questions that were submitted before, but we got through a lot of the live questions.
Like I said, as long as there's people here, we'll keep rolling. So, don't everyone leave on me at once, because then it would make me feel sad. But like, if you guys are ready, kind of just like wave the white flag out there. Otherwise, we'll keep going.
Let me ask this question that Matt submitted in advance. Chris, in the OG episodes of Demand Gen Live, I remember you saying you loved the case study play on paid social content distribution. Are you still seeing that work well for B2B SaaS? I'm curious to get your latest thoughts on this approach.
We launched one last week for one of the companies that I work with. We spent $1,000. We got 2 demos. They were qualified demos. Their ACV is $50K. I'm pumped about it, and it works. And so the thing is that you need to understand, you need to run enough of the tests. Like, we've started to get to a place where we have all these different plays: product marketing, case studies, top of funnel blogs, problem awareness blogs, these things, videos. We have a core set of plays, and we run them all. And we find that depending on the audience and the channel breakdown and the cost of the product, that different plays work with different audiences. And sometimes it's the first case study fails and the second one does well. And so there's a period of experimentation that a lot of marketers either don't have inside of their company to actually have 3 case studies fail, and that gives them the space to have the 4th one work, because oftentimes you're not going to hit it out of the park on the first one. And so we go and test things. And there are some companies where we're like, forget it. We don't need any of this written content. Let's run product marketing. It's working. Let's just go. And until it doesn't work anymore, sometimes you have to adjust the strategy at some point. Sometimes it doesn't. Other companies, you can't go so hard in product. And we get the best results on top funnel problem awareness blogs and case studies put together in some type of flow that way. And so the play works, but the question is, does the play work for your audience? And have you tried it enough in order for it to work? A case study with GE Healthcare is going to work better than a case study with blah, blah, blah medical that you've never heard of, right? And so what we're finding is, like, we've been running case studies because now we work with like really great, strong companies that have case studies with the best brands in the world. And those ones carry a ton of weight and they drive a huge impact. And so the brand recognition of the people in the case study is important. I've walked through this, the quantifiable business outcome. We have probably run at least 100 different case studies across 20 different companies over the past 12 months. You need a quantifiable business outcome in order for it to work. It must be in there. And so the idea that, I wish I had some examples, because there's some that I've seen that have been so fluffy. XYZ company discovers better alignment when they use this tool. It's like, what the hell does that mean? You know what I mean? And so the quantifiable business outcome, having a recognizable brand really helps. And then knowing how to like write the content in a compelling way, which comes back to understanding your customers. If you understand a lot about like what they're going through, you actually write that content in a different way. I like the idea of using the news reporter mindset on the case study too, as opposed to the seller, because you got a lot of case studies that are just back end sales pitches. And oftentimes those don't work. And so, yeah, the case study, I never talked about that, but thinking about the case study like a news reporter would be really helpful insight too. How do you produce content objectively as possible without trying to drive someone into a sale by just giving them the information? I think is a huge unlock for people that are creating paid short form, top mid funnel content.
That was awesome. I forgot about my fun question from Charlie. So he prefaces this with, this is a serious question.
Did he fire all the SDRs
yet? He's not on. I'm sure I'll talk to him on LinkedIn tomorrow. He says this is serious. Why don't you post memes? I've seen people do it. I'm curious if you have a particular stance on this, if you think it reduces credibility, or are you secretly posting them without me noticing?
I don't really have an answer. I don't really have an answer for this one. It could be perhaps because I'm like not that funny.
Come on.
That could be one. But more than likely, it's just that like there are clear content types that are working that fit kind of like our style. If you want to go as far as our brand voice, you know what I mean? That is just like, it's just not in our wheelhouse, either for me or at the company level, to be posting memes. And the second thing is that a lot of memes end up being gimmicks to get engagement. And I'm over here trying to get business results, not engagement. And so, in that case, you can post a funny meme with a cat and get 1 million likes and have 0 new customers. And I would much rather post a video that has an impact, that teaches people something, that gets 100 views and gets me 2 customers. And so that's the way that I look at it and why we don't use memes.
Fair enough. I had to get the question in. Charlie's my friend now.
We'll take any questions out here, especially at 9:03 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh yeah, bye. I'll bring you on. You ready for another warm take?
Oh, nice. He's back. He's back for warm takes.
Or maybe just a quick question. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this has a take in it. What's up, everybody? Good to
What's
see
up?
you
What's
again.
up?
What's up? Hey, question about email. One thing definitely like you've analyzed correctly is that part of the dynamic of everybody gating all of their content is the drive for MQLs, right? Being on that MQL hamster wheel. I think one of the other things that's driving it is sometimes goals set by marketing leaders, including myself, for their team to hit certain email list growth numbers, right? And even if that's not tied to MQLs that you send to an SDR team, just, hey, we want to grow our opt-in email list by, X subscribers per month. And I think it gets back to somewhat of an artificial goal that creates a bad audience experience, right? So, but the question I have for you is, do you think that email list subscriber growth is still important in B2B SaaS? And if so, and we're also bought into the idea of ungating our content to maximize education and consumption of the message that we want our audience to consume, what are some other ways to go about increasing our opt-in subscriber list in a world that we're not gating our content? Maybe other than just like a general like pop-up subscribe to get tips pop-up that's all over the site or something like that. So kind of those two parts, if you feel like email list growth is still important.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be hard for me to say that email list growth is unimportant, right? But again, my position on email is it needs to be your 5th strategy, not your number 1. And so like email becomes a secondary thing. And I think, don't quote me on this, and if I'm wrong, then I didn't do it, but I'm pretty sure that if somebody has a sales deal attached to them from Salesforce and they're coming into marketing automation, that you do have permission to email them. So if sales is populating things with people and opportunities, I do believe that, but don't quote me on it. Go check and make sure that it's true for yourself. So there's one. The next thing that I would offer if you need to grow the list is events. As opposed to email, because an event, you have a real reason that they need to sign up, as opposed to an ebook that you don't. So I think events would be interesting. Would you grow slower than running an ebook and getting $50 downloads on LinkedIn? Maybe, because the event's got to be really good. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that would be a different idea. But I had never thought about that before, because whether it's MQLs or email with subscriber, both are driving to the same thing, which is optimizing for that specific metric. And so it's because I don't want to make a blanket statement, and we do have customers where email is a big channel. When I say big, I mean like they send emails and they get a couple demos, and like that helps when you're only getting 100 demos a month, right? And I've been at companies where we had 100,000 person list, and we only had, whatever it was, a couple 100,000 that would even be able to buy the product. And so we had a very large list, and I was very good at figuring out what content I should send to help with the message to drive the outcomes that I want. And so like, I'm not against email. I just recognize that the ability for it to move a business forward is declining, not growing.
Yeah.
And so, and I wanted to throw this out there because I've never announced this, but I want people to understand what the behavior that I'm taking is. And I'm definitely not the person that has the most cold emails that happen to me in the world. There's people that get way more cold emails than me, that come through something like Outreach, that are not written manually, that come through some type of spam system, and there's an unsubscribe at the bottom. And when I get one, I open it. The first thing that I do is I open it. And the only reason that I open it, and they're back at HQ being like, yeah, 2% open rate. And I open it. And the first thing that I do is I click the 3 buttons in Gmail and I hit report spam and unsubscribe. Every single email that I get that is unsolicited sales email. And people need to think about this, because over time, my behavior is only like somewhere between on current and a year ahead of what people will be doing. I know that because I've been doing things for 6 years and I just watch how people do it. So I'm just a little bit ahead. Typically, other people will catch up to this because their inboxes are cluttered with garbage. And so over time, as people recognize that behavior, and every time you send out an email, you just get 1,000 unsubscribes, your email is going to have a lot of problems. And so, yeah. I think that something will come out to protect. Gmail will need to protect email, or people will go somewhere else because of how bad it's getting. Do you have a follow-up? I feel like I kind of got sidetracked there and had to tell about I wanted to make people really understand my unsubscribe story. And I made people very clearly understand a year ago my behavior when I get a cold LinkedIn DM and I immediately go in there and remove a connection. And I can imagine when I say that, I think that I hope that some people do that now, because that channel is getting flooded with trash too. So all I do is literally, thanks for your note, not going to respond, going to click to your profile, I'm going to remove you as a connection. You will never message me again. Goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that as a trend, email is becoming a less effective channel, not a more effective one. And right. So, but I do think that, like you're saying, there are some things that genuinely require an email opt-in and that are suited by that medium. And like, that's just where to invest, instead of artificially putting a gate in front of things just to hit a subscriber list growth goal or an MQL goal. Mm-hmm. It's like, what is that channel actually suited to in terms of providing a good customer engagement or education experience, and use it for that. Maybe another one, like there's been a little bit of a renaissance of like really nicely curated newsletters. Mm-hmm. And that's like maybe another idea around this, of using that to build an email list because it's actually well suited to that channel and not something that's artificial.
Mm-hmm. I've always wondered, by the way, when I say I've always wondered, it just popped into my mind 3 seconds ago. So let me rephrase that. Is that the people that are having success with these newsletters, like the first one that came to mind to me was Scott Barker, but there's other people out there that have an audience. And what I was thinking is that did they have the success because of email, or did email happen after the success? And so if you think about the order of operations here, I think that the email newsletter happens once you have an audience that people want content in that channel. Like I get asked for an email newsletter now, and I don't do it because it's just another channel. And if I'm going to do another channel, I'm going to do it contextual to that channel. And it just takes a long time to write a good email, and I'm not going to do it. And so, but I would look at other examples that you see from the newsletters. You can do that to see, did they build their customer base or their business or their audience through email, or did they build an audience somewhere else and then move it into email? Cool. I want to see you back for warm takes. I have a second opinion. I'm having second thoughts. I want to do that part of the episode.
Okay, warm takes. Then that can become a meme too. We'll do a 2-for-1 here.
Perfect.
That was good. Anyone got a warm take to close us out tonight? Or anyone want to come on for a final question?
Cool. Perfect. All right, everyone. I appreciate you sticking around. There will be details before this time next week, and we'll probably drop the link in the chat. I think it will probably be one of our best attended events, is the one with Dave Gerhardt on February 11th. I will put together an agenda of topics. We are going to be coming in hot, so not a lot of stuff that we normally talk about here. We're going to leverage Dave's expertise to talk about some of the things that he is a real expert in, that I think that him and I would share some good opinions on. So look out for that. Hope to see you there. For the people listening afterwards, it's at 1 p.m., which is a good time in the EU. So hope to see you there. And it's always a pleasure seeing you, and I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us for this on a Tuesday night. I literally love it, and it's so great to see you all. And hope you have a great night.
Have a good week, everyone. See you next Tuesday.